All right. Well, then I will go ahead and bring the meeting to order. This is the June 24th Parks and Open Space Advisory Committee meeting. And we are actually missing our chair and our co-chair right now. So I will step in to try to lead this meeting until Jenna Gilletta comes on. So our first item of business, Renata?
It is the roll call.
Okay. So I don't see everybody's face here. So Trace Baker.
Present.
Janet George.
Present. I'm here.
Okay. Let's see, Tony Lewis.
I am here and I am driving, so I will be transitioning to my laptop when I get home in about 20 minutes.
Okay. And I see Heather Williams.
Present.
Is there anyone else I'm not picking up on my screen?
Ann Obenchain, present.
Ah, there you go. Thank you, Ann.
Paula, did you get Janet?
I did, I believe.
Okay.
Okay, so we do have a quorum. We'll move next to the next item on the agenda. And Renata, can you read that?
Yes, that's approval of the May 27th, 2021 meeting minutes.
Okay. Do I have any motions to approve?
It's Trace Baker. I move the POSAC approve the May 2021 minutes.
Ann
Tony
Obenchain,
Lewis.
second.
Okay, I hear Tony Lewis second. All in favor? Aye.
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 Opposed? Okay, so that is approved. Next item on the agenda, Renata?
Yes, that's public participation for items not on the agenda. Okay.
All right. Great.
So now it's time for presentations. The first one is the Tolland Ranch Trail Construction Update.
Okay.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me okay?
Yep, and Justin will lead that presentation.
Yep. This is Justin Atherton Wood. I'm one of the senior planners with Parks and Open Space. I am potentially going to be joined by Mary Olson, who is one of our landscape architects and one of the co-managers of recreation and facilities right now. I don't see her present just yet, but I can fill in for her if needed. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. Can you guys see the PowerPoint?
Yes.
Great. Okay. So I don't know if any of you are familiar with this project, but I've been with Boulder County for 10 years now, and I've been involved in the project directly or indirectly since pretty much my first day in May of 2011. So it's been a long-standing effort and part of a larger trail concept that I'll be telling you about. This is a picture in the setting of what's going on up there. Pretty cool spot. So just to kind of orient you to where we're talking about, the purple shape in the middle is Tolland Ranch. And in 2015, Boulder County was part of a partnership that purchased a conservation easement over Tolland Ranch with funding from the Forest Legacy Program, and also from GOCO, and the Conservation Fund led the project, coordinated the whole transaction with the Toll family. The trail itself is located in this general area across the property. Just to give you a little bit of context, the Peak to Peak Highway is over there east of Tolland Ranch, and you can see Nederland to the north, and also can see the wilderness areas to the west. Zooming in just a little bit, the purpose of the trail really is to connect the West Mag Trail system on the right with Jenny Creek Trail up towards Rawlins Pass on the left. And it just shares a landscape with the Eldora ski area to the north. And I'll tell you about some of the really unique and special natural resources in that part of the property that's south of the trail. And uniquely, most of Tolland Ranch is in Gilpin County. I just plopped in the county boundary there. But I'm gonna let you know why it's important to Boulder County. So here's a map from our comp plan. As you know, we make a lot of our kind of land use and acquisition decisions using the comp plan as a basis for that. This is the county trails map, and it shows a regional trail corridor connecting the Boulder area with the Continental Divide. It's sort of a, you know, this is what we call in the comp plan a corridor, which is, you know, not a well-defined location, but more a gesture to points that we want to connect. So if you take a look at the open space map, you can see that the line from the comp plan shows going through Boulder's open space area, connecting up with Walker Ranch, and then kind of this large connection of Forest Service, and then moving towards Reynolds Ranch here. As we make our way towards the Continental Divide, this here is Tolland Ranch. So it makes a lot of sense to sort of conceive of that connection on Gilpin County. One of our biggest partners and allies in making this come to fruition is U.S. Forest Service. As many of you probably know, they've been engaged in their own trails planning in the area through the Magnolia Trails Plan. And so we've been working together real closely for years and years to resolve things up there. A few years back, they did a large forest project, and sort of what their process looks like, doing these forest treatments and then coming back behind with the recreation. So they did this big NEPA project called the Magnolia Area Trails Plan. Here again is Nederland, Peak to Peak Highway bisecting sort of the planning area. Tolland is over here. Partway through their process, they actually expanded the boundary of the project so that this decision-making around the Tolland Ranch Trail could be integrated into their process, and it really has been a huge help. And I'll tell you about some of those details here in just a little bit. But this is how the trail lies. West Mag, we're sort of looking south. West Mag is over here. The trail kind of climbs up this backside of this mountain. It's called Buckeye Mountain. And then it traverses this ridge here and then switches back down into towards where Jenny Creek is behind the resort. And it drops into an area called Dead Man's Gulch. If you've ever skied at the Nordic trails up at Eldora, you can kind of have a picture of where that trail ends up on the Jenny Creek side. And this is a picture from the Forest Service slide on the previous one, but it kind of gives you a hint at the character of what we're aiming for with this trail. This is just a quick plan view. Again, West Mag on this side, climbing up behind Buckeye Mountain. This is the portion on the ridge, and then dropping back down into this area where Dead Man's Gulch is, and connecting up towards Rawlins Pass on the Jenny Creek Trail. This is a slide of the West Mag side. We'll come back to this this picture at the end, but it just kind of gives you an idea of the nice, some of the meadowy areas up there, the forest, aspen. It's just really quite beautiful. And this is a marker down in Dead Man's Gulch in the Nordic Trails area. So those are kind of the two ends. And as you proceed through the trail corridor, you go through a bunch of different interesting forests. Sometimes it's heavy, like the picture on the right. Other times it's really dry and a little more open. Again, some of that dry open area, but then over by Dead Man's Gulch, you can really get a sense of a different forest type over there. One of the other really special things about the trail is the views from that ridge are really spectacular. This is a view of James Peak, which I learned today is actually the point where Gilpin County, Clear Creek County, and Grand County come together. This is just stepping back a little bit. James Peak is right here. You can see the Indian Peaks Wilderness over in this area here. But this again is just one of those special views. The other nice thing is you can get the view down into Tolland itself and South Boulder Creek down in this kind of open meadow. Tolland, if you've been up there, you get the sense that it's a kind of a historic cultural landscape. The train's been up there for 100-something years. And Tolland itself was named by the matriarch of the Toll family, the folks that own Tolland Ranch, Catherine. And she really, her husband had bought the area thinking it might be developed as a reservoir, and she really took to the natural beauty of it. And you can really sort of feel that stewardship ethic in the family today. It's been a real pleasure to work with them over the years and get to know them. Now, who are these smiling ladies, you might ask? Some of you may remember these folks as our Board of County Commissioners, Cindy, Deb, and Elise. They're up towards Rollins Pass. I think that's probably Boulder County in the background, but they're looking out at that really special South Boulder Creek parkland. And I like to show this slide because when I talk about the trail, because it's equally important where the trail isn't as where it is, right? The strategy with the tolls was really to identify a corridor that would be most suitable for providing the connection while also protecting all the amazing resource values that are up at the ranch and in the surrounding area. I just wanted to go back to the conservation easement map and kind of make a distinction between the conservation easement, which is held by the State Forest Service, and this public trail easement that Boulder County owns. While they were purchased at the same time, they're separate property rights, and really our primary responsibility lies with the trail easement itself. So that star there indicates where the commissioners were standing, just to give you a sense of that geography. And here is where the trail lies. Well, and one of the things I think that's cool about this map is you really see that by making the acquisition of the conservation easement, it really just puts in place, you know, a nice collection of public land and protected land that is protected from development. It was important enough that Senator Bennett came out to the celebration of the acquisition in 2015 to talk about you know, what was being protected in the headwaters there of South Boulder Creek, with all the meadows and riparian stuff. And then these characters, these elk down at Walker Ranch, you know, are one of the values that we keep track of with our comp plan. And I think they reveal a lot about how successful we're being with our conservation efforts. in that when they're able to make their way through their migration corridors, we know that we've been successful at, keeping that process of them moving from the high country down to the lower areas in the winter, keeping that a possibility. And so here's just another map from the comp plan. And in our last update, we included these wildlife migration corridors. So in that photo, they're probably hanging out in somewhere in this vicinity. We're talking about Tolland here, but that's where they spend their summer and do calving. So going forward, of course, thinking about what the trail connectivity looks like is going to continue to be important. And of course, it was a consideration in our planning. I'm just going to drop in this is the area that the elk moved through as they make their transition in the spring and the fall. And so we knew going in, this, like I mentioned, is the planning area for the trail. And when we arrived at our alignment, that something like this, we were able to avoid these important natural resources that have been mapped in here and even up in these areas where the trail starts and stops. Let's see, I don't know if Mary made it. Did you make it, Mary? Doesn't sound like it. Okay, so I'll go ahead and talk through these slides. But the reason why we're talking today to you is there's a couple things going on. The first is we're getting ready to go to construction. So after, like I said, 10 years of planning, we're on the edge of moving into construction up there. So I'll tell you a little bit about that. One of our biggest challenges, and one of the reasons why it's taken us the length of time that it has to get to where we are today, is that access up there is a real challenge. The blue line here is the trail, and these are some of the access routes. Otherwise, it's pretty steep and rocky, and it's still pretty wet up there even today. So the trail season really can't start until July. So short construction season, which also meant a short planning season. Like I said, we're up at in this high alpine environment. The access is pretty challenging. It's all four-wheel drive access. Got a short season, so we're taking this approach of using contractors and volunteers and some in-house staff to make to build the trail. We spent a number of years with our consultant, Contour Logic, in the design of the trail. We're real excited about the layout and that we were able to bring sort of sustainable design principles into the design. Like I said, we're out to bid, or no, we're out to bid. We've signed the contract and they're getting ready to start. And we have had some pretty good interest from volunteer groups. And they even have done some work up there already. Just in terms of budget, the contracted cost is about $400,000. We got a really nice grant from GOCO, Colorado the Beautiful grant, partly in recognition for its potential role in creating some regional connectivity that people have been wanting for many years. Then we also have this sizable donation from the Michael Bryan Trust. Mr. O'Brien was really involved with VOC, Volunteers for Outdoor Colorado, and lived in the Boulder area, is really passionate about creating access to public land. So this project is really aligned with what he hoped his estate would be able to support. A couple things to note here. We're going to have one of our longer tenured trail staff up there working with the contractor, Timberline Trailcraft. The plan is for them to work this summer and next summer. And then there'll be some work yet again in 2023 that county staff will do related to signage and fencing and gates and so on. So we're anticipating to open in the summer of 2024. And the project just wouldn't be possible at all without some really great partners. Right here on the left is Scott Gordon. He has been our trails design consultant. He and I have spent numerous hours up there together. Here, this goofball is Matt Henry. He's the recreation lead for the Boulder Ranger District. And like I said, they've been really important partners and will be important partners going forward into management. This is Ben. He's the like regional trails person for Parks and Wildlife. So their partnership has been really valuable, and it was really important to have a good relationship with them going into the grant process. Another really important partner has been Eldora Mountain Resort. You can see here this hashed area is actually a lease that the portion of the property that they lease from Tolland Ranch for their Nordic trails and for the small expansion of alpine skiing that they're doing over the next few years. So we really have been working with them for a number of years to make sure that we kind of cohabitate well. And the partnership has been so good that they're actually letting us use their parking lot for our staging area for construction, and the contractors actually will be living in trailers in their parking lot for over this summer. So I'm almost at the end here, but I wanted to touch on some things that make this this trail really unique and what it's going to look like going forward in terms of management. There are a number of conditions in the public trail easement that were part of the purchase. So number one, we had this planning area that was 650 feet wide that allows us to really focus in on where the trail was going to go. And so once the trail is constructed, that will narrow to 30 feet. And that will kind of be the area that, our rules and regulations will apply and that the public are allowed to be, since, we're going through private property. Number two, it was really important to the tolls that we not create connectivity with Eldora's Nordic system. So we put a lot of thought into that. Additionally, the trail will be closed when Eldora is open for business for obvious reasons. We've been working closely with Gilpin County on this next thing, on an intergovernmental agreement that really has to do with the enforcement aspect of this. So our rangers will be able to write tickets for violations of our rules and regulations within that 30-foot easement. That's what makes that important. And then those tickets would have to be processed in Gilpin County Court. So we really need the commissioners in Gilpin County to be on board with that process, and we're in good shape there, getting close to getting that signed. This will be an area that's used for passive recreation only, consistent with our rules and regulations, dogs on leash, and all our other rules and regulations will apply, including motorized use being prohibited. And I'll talk about that a little bit more here in just a sec. If the trail isn't constructed within 10 years, then the easement will automatically be extinguished. So we're in good shape there with our plan to be open in 2024. And then some just like little details about the tolls notifying us if they do force management that would necessitate trail closure, and then some agreement about what happens if we need to close the trail for natural disasters or anything, now that we've got some experience with that. So part of the reason why I got to go first today and not my real estate friends is that an opportunity has come up to purchase what we're describing as the Aldridge property. It's shown here in red. It's immediately east of Tolland, Tolland Ranch. Tolland Ranch is here, and you can see the trail indicated here. it's a really great location to help us with the management of the trail. There's a spur road right here that the Forest Service shows installing a gate at the end of, and here's a picture of the spur road. And why that's important is this dark line here is the primary four-wheel drive access through the West Mag area. So putting a gate here will really help us control unauthorized motorized use that could that has historically been on Tolland Ranch. So we can kind of get a handle on that. And again, one of the reasons why that partnership with the Forest Service is important. So it's in a strategic location, gives us the opportunity to, control access. We have these two other properties here, so we'd have this collection of 3 properties where we really can work closely with the Forest Service in what management looks like in this area going forward. And in addition to that, that's where the picture is. But I wanted to show you this image of the property. Here's that road 105, and the spur road kind of comes through here, but it's got this great open, flat, disturbed area that can help us in future emergencies, staging for construction, and other kind of uses that I think will come up over time. So that's what I've got. Glad to have the chance to give you this update, and I would be happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Justin.
Mhm.
I'll go ahead and just start with a couple comments that first, I totally commend you for working on such a complex trail project. It has just huge amount of potential with that connectivity, the Continental Divide Trail, but just anything that gets us into the high mountains and does it in a respectful way to the resources is, that's a challenge. And, all the intergovernmental agreements and everything else, I applaud you for your work.
Thanks, Paula. That means a lot coming from you. I appreciate that.
But can't have been easy. So, and then the grant with the, a trust and all the other complex portions of that. So I think that's wonderful work. And with that, I'll open it up to any other committee members who'd like to make comments or questions.
Trace Baker here. Justin, thank you for a very thorough and understandable presentation here.
Yeah, sure.
First question, what's the total elevation gain and loss along the trail?
Oh boy, that's a good question. I don't
Roughly.
know. And boy, it's a good climb at first. I don't know if it's 1,000 feet, but it could be close.
Okay. Thank you. Second comment, and please forgive my nitpick here, but on page 6 of our packet, you say the recent opportunity to acquire Aldridge property in fee by Boulder County is quite surreptitious. Do you mean serendipitous?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Trace. Anyone else?
Yeah, Janet here. I would like to echo too, great job, great presentation. That the Toll property is an outstanding property, especially from a wildlife conservation standpoint. And I did have some questions about the elk movements, but you nailed it. You got all those answered. So good job. I guess my only question at this point, if the trail corridor is going to get narrowed down to 30 feet, what kind of actions are going to be taken to keep people in such a narrow trail corridor through that property?
Well, I think part of what we've done is to make sure that the trail's where people want to go. It's kind of the first thing, right? You create the place that you want people to go, and the places they want to go. So I think by the amount of effort that went into citing the trail and making sure that it's a fun experience for people, that's kind of the first thing that we can do, right? The second thing is we have these kind of access control measures in mind, you know, in terms of like what it looks like to actually enter onto the property. Like there will be gates as you go from the Forest Service onto toll and off toll. So you'll be aware that you're moving onto somebody's property, right? I think once people are on the trail, you know, we can't do much to control them going off, but what we have tried to do, like I said, is make it an enjoyable experience, kind of find the areas where, in partnership with the Forest Service, really work to identify where trespass has occurred in the past and sort of use their plan, the Forest Service's plan, to get rid of some of the roads and get some of the social trails and even formally designated roads to focus people where we want them to be. And then, you know, our rangers can write tickets within the easement, the trail easement. So if someone is off the trail easement and they catch them coming back onto the trail easement, then I can't imagine a ticket couldn't be written for that.
Okay.
Great. Janet, do you have any other questions there?
No, thank you.
Okay, all right. Anyone else?
Just good job, Justin. Long project, big project.
Yeah.
It's kind of wonder what you're going to do next, but
Always plenty to do.
nice work.
Thank you.
Okay. Well, and do we have any comments from the public? Okay, so why don't we open it up for a motion?
I think since it's an informational item.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I didn't get that part. So, okay, thank you very much, Justin.
You're welcome.
And I see Jen has now joined us. I don't see her video is started, but Jen was going to lead this meeting, so I would happily turn it over to her.
Mommy. Hi, Paula. I'll let you continue sharing since you're doing such a great job.
Okay, all right. Well then,
Thank you.
Renata, if you can read the next item.
Yep. Next up is the Aldridge Acquisition, and it'll be presented by Sandy Duff.
Okay, and is that an information item as well? Again, I don't have the agenda in front of me.
It's recommendation to the BOCC.
Okay, thank you.
Hello, POSAC members, Sandy Duff, Senior Land Officer, and I'm here presenting on behalf of Tina Berghardt, a land officer with the Real Estate Division. And I will start with sharing my screen. That one. And is that working for everybody?
Yes.
Okay, terrific. So I am here tonight, and I also, like everybody else, very much appreciate Justin's presentation and our entire department's internal and external collaboration. And as Justin had said, the timing of this proposed acquisition, which is the Aldridge Acquisition, is truly serendipitous. So we appreciate that. So tonight we're here to present an acquisition to acquire, or proposed acquisition to acquire the fee title to approximately 10 acres of vacant mountain land, as Justin had indicated, for $115,000, which just happens to be in the area that's integral to the Tolland Ranch Trail that you just heard about. So the property is down here at the, as you know, the Boulder and Gilpin County line. And Gilpin County is not assigned any type of address to the property, but you can see by the map that it's just east of the Tolland Ranch CE property. The property is owned by a guy named John Aldridge. And we tonight are proposing to acquire the fee title to 10 acres of the 10-acre Aldridge property. It is a 5.14 acre load, which is called the Lone Star load. and the tenderfoot load, which is 4.86 acres. This acquisition would be paid for with Conservation Trust Fund dollars. And the as you see, it is east of the Tolland Ranch property here. Here's an aerial view of it, just like Justin had showed you. The purchase would include all mineral rights for the property and any associated water rights. A phase 1 environmental assessment will be completed prior to closing, and if they show any mining hazards on the property, we would notify the state of Colorado's Division of Mining, Reclamation, and Safety for formal closure of the hazards, and then it would be opened back up. And here's another aerial view, as you've seen. And this is the map that Justin was showing you just a little bit ago. And as you heard, and I'll just do a brief recap for the record, but the importance of the Aldridge property is best understood in the context of the Tolland Ranch Conservation Easement and the Tolland Trail Easement, and how the Aldridge property fits into the intended ability to connect those two trail systems. So back in 2015, Boulder County invested $1.5 million to acquire the public trail easement and a backup holder position in the CE over the 3,334 acre Tolland Ranch, lying both in Boulder and Gilpin counties, as you saw. Boulder County has invested another $600,000 in grant funding and donations, plus county staff time and money in planning, design, and construction of the Tolland Ranch Trail. And as you heard, the trail will connect the two U.S. Forest Service managed trail systems, the West Mag Trail System over up here, and the Greater Rollins Pass area via the Jenny Creek Trail down over here. So as you can see on the map, the Aldridge property is bisected by the U.S. Forest Service Road 105.1 from the north to the south. So this is 105.1 coming down here. And a Forest Service administrative 4x4 road spurs to the west from the Forest Service Road 105.1, which is this road coming over here. And the Forest Service wants to limit that to just administrative and non-motorized uses, and it's not meant to be open to the public. And currently, as maybe Justin mentioned, that there's a problem with unauthorized motorized use of the 4x4 trail, since it's easily accessible from that road 105.1. So causing trespass issues onto the Tolland Ranch CE property to the west. So I believe when the Toll family granted the CE and the trail easement, one of their main concerns and reasons for granting the trail easement was to keep motorized use off the property and to direct public use along one route rather than through the entire property. So upon acquisition of the Aldridge property, the county would be able to install a gate at the intersection of the road here, 105.1, and that would prohibit vehicular traffic from going west towards the trail while still allowing the non-motorized use access with bike riding and hiking to the west. So that would dramatically improve the trespass issue on the Tolland Ranch CE. So as Justin mentioned as well, so here's the county line here. Here's the property there. And there's this flat area, which would be terrific for staff parking, for staging, for emergency vehicles. So obviously with the Boulder County Comp Plan, the property has all kinds of natural features, but it's in Gilpin County. So we can't equate that to exactly what we have in our Boulder County Comp Plan. And so here is a picture looking west. Do I have another photo? I do not, so I'm going to go backwards. And so staff is recommending approval. Like we said, the timing on this acquisition was terrific. It'll allow us to manage the current trespass situation on the Tolland Ranch CE, and it would be county ownership of the property. Will further facilitate the completion and management of the Tolland Ranch Trail. So we're asking for recommendation tonight for the board of for approval to the BOCC to purchase the properties, the two mining claims, for $115,000. So happy to try to answer any questions for you.
Great, thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome.
I just have one question, and it's, kind of 101 on mining claims versus a mine. And I know you make a claim first, and the mine may or may not have been actually, built or dug out. Is there anything else you can add? I know you're doing a phase 1 assessment, but when do we know that for sure?
If there's hazards on the property,
Yeah, well, just the difference between a mining claim and which is, filed first, I know.
Yeah.
And if there's actually ever was a real mine there constructed.
I think it looks like something had gone on in the past there, because it looks like there's a big tailings pile there. And so that's why, we check all of our properties when we do our acquisitions for that reason. So it's more than likely there's probably something there so that probably has been mined in the past, but we don't know exactly where until we go through that phase 1. Yeah.
Okay, great. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, well, I'm going to open it up to any other questions or comments from the committee.
Hey, Sandy, this is Tony Lewis. I'm curious if you could just tell me what that wacky kind of rectangle of excluded land is about. Like on your map on one of the first slides, it shows the property and then this kind of rectangle of land that isn't included.
Oh, the one that's going through here.
Yeah.
Yes, that would be, make sure I'm looking at the right thing. Right here? Is that, Tony, what you're talking about?
Yes, it is.
Yes,
Exactly.
yep. So that would be actually a spur of another mining claim that or property coming down through here. So a lot of times you'd have mining operations where somebody went ahead and they found a vein up here and they went ahead and patented that. And then this one came after. I'm not sure of the timing on both of these on who came first, but we see a lot of this up in the mountains where all the different claims intersect each other.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Good. Any other questions or comments?
Trace Baker here. Thank you very much, Sandy. 2 topics. In the packet for POSAC, Aldridge property contains many natural features that are worthy of conservation. Do you have any specific examples of these?
I'm sorry, how many what?
It says property contains many natural features that are worthy of conservation. Do you have specific examples?
What I don't have is its relation to our comp plan, unfortunately, since it is in Gilpin County. And my understanding is that I don't think there's a lot of comp plans out there in Gilpin. Gilpin's a very small county. And somebody told me that their entire department is probably less people than their open space department doesn't exist, and there are very few people. So I think we have more people in our parks and open space than they do. So that's not information we could pull, but I would assume it's very similar to the reasons why we also got involved over in Tolland with the migration that Justin was talking about of the elk. We've got similar the tree canopy out there. So we've got a lot of similarities for the whole area. We just don't have those specifics for the comp plan.
Okay, thank you, Sandy. Second topic, both you and Justin mentioned the installation of a gate at the intersection of Forest Service Road 105 and the administrative 4x4 road. And I'm wondering then, is control of access with these gates really more about being a good neighbor to the tolls and less about conservation of the land?
I would think that it's conservation of our land as well. And so, yes, we want to be neighbors with the toll family, but we also want to prohibit all that motorized access from going out and try to keep our vehicle access on the designated areas out there. So,
and that's certainly a very good reason to acquire. So thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome.
Okay, anyone else? All right. Seeing no one, move on to opening it up for a motion for this. This is a recommendation of Boulder County County Commissioners.
Trace Baker, I recommend that the acquisition of Aldridge be approved as described by staff.
And do I hear a second?
Jen Archuleta,
I'll
second.
second it.
Okay, we'll go ahead and vote. All in favor, aye.
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 I,
And opposed? Seeing none, this motion passes. So thank you very much, Sandy. Appreciate it.
Thank you very much. We appreciate it.
Okay, and Renata, move on to the next item.
Yep, next item is the Holmes Acquisition by Mel Stonebreaker.
Hello, everybody. Let me get myself turned on here. Can you see anything from that? Let me get this going here. Good. Make it fill the screen a little bit. There we go. So I'm Mel Stonebreaker, Parks and Open Space staff, and I'm here tonight to talk to you about our proposed acquisition of the Holmes property, which is 137 acres. It includes some significant water rights and some improvements, a house and some other buildings. It is located just north of the school on 75th Street and Hygiene. If you know Hygiene at all, you'll know where that is. It's sort of tucked back, and if you drive down 75th Street, you won't even know it's there. It's kind of behind the old house and a bunch of trees. But I'll show you some pictures here coming up, and you'll get a sense of what's back there. Obviously, one of the most important parts of our desire to own this property is, you can see its location and how it's sort of tucked into a much larger area of open space that we've already acquired. It started in the 80s and with the first Lore acquisition, and didn't end until I think 2006 when we bought the Dirks property on the far east end. So this is arguably the last piece in that sort of mosaic that we've been creating out there. But let me show you some pictures so you can get a sense of what we're talking about. The property, as you can see, there is a ditch running right through here, through the middle of it, which is the oligarchy ditch, and that's one of the water rights that will come with this property. So the property has kind of a unique characteristic. There's sort of a west side and an east side. Let me show you how that sort of turns out. So this is some of the outbuildings that we would be acquiring. There's some more further back. There are 3 old silos that are part of the property. There's another building similar to this to the right side. This is the house, which faces onto 75th Street. It's estimated to have been built in 1900. It's 2,000 square feet. Here's a look at the side of it. It's got a an extension off the back and then a nice porch. So the county would be acquiring this house along with the rest of the property. I didn't talk about what we might do with this house much in my memo, but there are a number of options obviously available. Something we'll have to look at as we go forward. One of those options might be to lease this house to an ag tenant. We don't have any housing around Lore and that whole larger area that I showed you a moment ago. And one possibility might be to use this house for that purpose. But there's a lot of study that needs to happen before we make that decision. So now we are on the west side of the oligarchy. And if you see these trees off in the distance kind of going off to the north, that's the oligarchy ditch. So this is the west side. It is usually, it's been used to grow hay and to graze cattle. That's been its historical use most of the time. This is also, the hay was just cut before I came out, so you can see it's cut quite short. But and again, this is the oligarchy and the big trees off to the east. Same thing. Now we're looking kind of northeast. And again, the oligarchy's in the middle of the property. So we have a kind of hay fields and the like there. As you cross from one side of the oligarchy to the other, you go, you're going toward the east now. And way off in the distance there, you can just make out the McIntosh Lake kind of on the horizon. So that might give you some sense of where you're at. This is the oligarchy as it crosses through. We're acquiring two very good water rights with this property. The Longmont supply is one of those, and it's 5.25 shares of Longmont supply, which is about 100 acre-feet of water. The other one is the oligarchy itself, and we get 8.33 shares of the oligarchy, which equates to about 233 acre-feet of water. So when you put those two together, you get 328 acre-feet, which is equivalent to about 2.4 acre-feet per acre, which is more water than we usually are able to acquire when we buy open space. In some cases, we get not much more than 1 or 1.4 acre-feet. So this is almost twice what we might usually expect in terms of the value of the water rights. So here we are again. Now we've sort of crossed over the ditch, and you can see McIntosh Reservoir off in the distance. So to your right is sort of Bragg Spangler going off. That's our open space there. And off to the left would be Lore as we come down this little path. But yeah, so Bragg Spangler is over here. This is McIntosh Reservoir. And on this side, they're growing corn. They sometimes grow corn and sometimes grow hay. And this is, looking north on the east side. So you can see the trees here again. This is the oligarchy ditch running along that way. And I think that's all I've got. Yeah. So let me go back to my map here. So as I said before, this is really a beautiful property. It's one that we've hoped we would be able to acquire for more than 20 years. I mean, I've been with the department for a little over 20 years, and this was on our priority list when I walked in the door. And I have talked with the Holmes family many times over the years, as have other people, to just sort of keep our relationship positive and hope that someday we might be able to acquire the property. So as you can see, it's bordered by 66 investments on the north and Lore and Bragg Spangler on the east. I'll give you some of the numbers. So the proposal is that we would acquire this property for $5.1 million, which would include the improvements and the water rights. The value of the improvements, that is just as they stand, the buildings and the outbuildings, is estimated at $600,000. The water rights, including those 8.33 shares of the oligarchy and 5.25 shares of Longmont Supply, we value at $990,000. I included the value of the left-hand water tap, which is something I wouldn't normally do, and that's about 30,000 of that 990,000. I'm not quite sure why I did that, but anyway, that's part of that number. And you can see by our chart how that all breaks down. And I think that's fairly self-explanatory. The transaction will be paid for with open space sales and use taxes. This acquisition will include the mineral rights, which are held by a separate entity, but which is owned also by the Holmes family, and we are acquiring both the fee interest in the property and the mineral rights for this price. There is no active oil and gas lease on the property. The property qualifies for 8 TDRs, and those TDR certificates will be issued in the seller's name and signed by the seller at closing. So the county will acquire 8 TDRs off of this property. We have a rather large supply of TDRs that we're holding on to, and this will be 8 more that we will put into that group. And they have some value, and there's a possibility at some point in the future that we might be able to recoup some of that value. As you know, the comp plan is a complicated document, but this property basically shows up as is designated as significant agricultural land of national importance. And there are some wetlands that show up in this area on the north side around the oligarchy ditch. As I said before, this property it is adjacent to a lot of other agricultural properties that we have. It's quite likely that it will be merged in with the surrounding agricultural properties, not necessarily under the same lease, but it could be. The water rights are used that we're getting on the Holmes property are we also use on some of the adjacent properties, so it would be quite easy to farm this as one larger unit. But right now it would be closed to the public because it's under an agricultural lease. We would be acquiring the property subject to that lease, which is with the Basher family, who we work with. They have a couple of other county leases, so the transition will be quite easy for us, I think. So staff recommends the acquisition of the Holmes property. As I say, we've been hoping we could acquire it for a very long time. You know, I talked about how it's bordered on 2 sides, but it really is adjacent to 325 contiguous acres of open space, all of which is agricultural. And as I said before, that all started as far back as 1985 with the first acquisition of the first Lore acquisition. And the last piece of that adjacent property was acquired in 2004. The whole piece together, if we include the homes and everything else, we would then have 462 acres of contiguous open space. So I hope that explains the acquisition satisfactorily. I guess I'm here tonight to ask for your recommendation to the BOCC for the acquisition of the Holmes property as described here. Thank you.
Great. Thank you, Mel. I just to start, I just have one question, and that is about the water.
Okay.
If there is excess water on in this purchase from what is needed for this property?
Well, if you ask our agricultural staff, they would be thrilled if we had 2.4 acre feet per acre of water on all of our property. They would not call it excess. But having said that, in some respects, it probably is. And that water can be moved around, and our agricultural staff would have to decide whether some of that might be moved over to Lore or down to Bragg Spandler. But as I say, those ditches that run through the Holmes property continue on to our open space. So it'll be a process of them trying to decide how best to use that water. And I suspect that some of that will find its way off of the Holmes property in the course of time. Yeah.
Well, that was my second part of my question. So you answered it preemptively, which is, you know, if it was able to be moved to other properties as needed. And I just wanted to add that, you know, 462 acres of contiguous open space. Actually, there's more than that with the city-owned property surrounding McIntosh Lake and Flanders and Dawson Park. So this is a pretty significant chunk of park and open space in northeastern Longmont area.
Right.
And then one other comment, and I know it's not appropriate at the time of acquisition, but just to put it in the record that when McIntosh District Park, or what's now called Nature Area, was being planned, there was several public comments about connecting from McIntosh to Hygiene through these properties. And so hopefully, whenever you look at other uses for this property, maybe some perimeter strips or something could be looked at as whether it would be appropriate for that use. So
Yes, I agree with that, and the acquisition of this property gives us that access now. You know, it would be something that, and I'm sure it'll be seriously considered. Yeah.
Great. I will open it up to any other committee members who have some questions or comments.
Trace Baker here. No questions, but Mel, I want to thank you for all the photography, because that certainly helped me understand the maps a lot better.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
Hey, Mel, this is Tony Lewis. Thank you for a great presentation, and I'm obviously excited about it because it's very close to my house. So I think it's an awesome purchase.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. I'm curious how long the agricultural lease is that we would be kind of acquiring in this process.
It's a verbal lease between the Holmes family and the Bashers. So it really is a year-to-year kind of agricultural lease. It comes in, it starts in the spring, you know, before the water starts running, and when the farmers go out and start putting seed in the ground. And it will run until that corn that you saw in that one picture is harvested in the fall. Mm-hmm. That's effectively the term of it. At that point, the county could continue it with them, and we wouldn't do it on a verbal basis. We would put it on in a written lease, or at that point we might decide to put it out for bid. And there are a couple of other people that are leasing some of that adjacent property, and it might make sense to see what they would, how it would work with them as well. But, so that hasn't been decided, but yeah, okay. At the end of this year, we would have that option to do what we want.
Great, thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, see no one. Let's open it up for a motion to Boulder County Commissioners regarding this acquisition.
So moved.
Do I hear a second?
Trace Baker, second.
A double second. Okay, why don't we go ahead? Oh, wait, I'm sorry. Do we have any public comments? Okay, great, thanks. I'm new at this position, so bear with me. So let's go ahead and vote. All in favor, aye.
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 Anyone opposed? Okay, it looks like the motion passes. Congratulations, Mel, and thanks for your good work.
Thank you, folks. I appreciate it.
Okay.
Thank you.
Renata, what's next?
Yep, next up are strategic plan updates for GIS and the technology group. Presenters are Christy Vandenbosch and Carl Federer, and this is an information item.
Okay, thank you. All right, who would like to start?
I'm going to start this evening. I'm Christy Vandenbosch. I'm the manager of the Data Solutions Group. So I'm going to start our slideshow, and then both Carl and I will take questions at the end of the presentation.
Great.
Good evening, POSAC members. I'm Tina Nielsen, here to introduce this month's strategic plan presentation. Over the course of 2021, we are showcasing strategic plan highlights from a couple of work groups each month, and over the course of the year, you'll be hearing from all 22 of our work groups. This month, we're hearing from the GIS and Tech work group. As the name suggests, this work group has two parts. They share the same desired future condition and goals, but the objectives are divided between those two parts. So you'll be hearing first from Christy Vandenbosch about the GIS objectives, and then from Carl Federer about the tech objectives. We'll take questions for both of these at the end of the presentation. So with that, I'll now turn it over to Christy and Carl for their presentations.
Good evening. I'm Christy Vandenbosch, the Data Solutions Program Manager for Boulder County Parks and Open Space. I'm here to present the Data Solution Team Strategic Plan. The Data Solutions Team in the Resource Planning Division is a recent merging of the GIS work group and our application developer position. GIS stands for Geographic Information Systems. Our new team now consists of 5 full-time positions. We also have 1 seasonal for 2021. Our desired future condition is a coordinated and enterprise-wide system of data analysis, technological solutions, and IT services that lead to the achievement of the department's goal of evidence-based decision-making. The Data Solutions team created our strategic plan in conjunction with the IT work group. I will be presenting the goals and objectives that are relevant to our team. Carl Federer will follow up with the goals and objectives relevant to the IT team. The Data Solutions team has 6 goals, which I will go through and discuss objectives associated with each. Goal 1 is to maintain accurate, consistent, and up-to-date data. Strategically maintaining data quality helps to focus and prioritize staff effort, ensure data is reliable and usable, and to coordinate efforts and resources within the department. Objective 1.1 is to develop a data management framework. With further research and planning, this is more appropriately becoming a data strategy and governance plan, which I will discuss in a moment. Objective 1.2 is to complete the process of linking our land and water database and our GIS data. This is an ongoing effort to fully functionalize our land and water database. This database allows us to track our portfolio of land, water, and mineral ownership. It's also the foundation of other management systems such as the Conservation Easement Tracking System and the Developing Water Data Management System. These types of systems ensure that all staff are accessing and utilizing the same high-quality data for management purposes. Objective 1.3 is to create operational level agreements for the Water Resources Data Management System. First, the Water Resources Data Management System is an effort to create an integrated enterprise system that ties together all aspects of Parks and Open Space water management program to enable efficient and accurate water inventory, tracking, management, and analysis. This system builds upon the land and water database and relies on the completeness and accuracy of that database in order to function. An operational level agreement is a document that explicitly states the roles, responsibilities, actions, processes, and policies involved for a particular project or service provided. This template developed for the Water Resources Data Management System project will become the template that we use for all other large projects requested from the Data Solutions team. Goal 2 is to analyze and visualize data resources. Once we have quality data, we need to give staff the ability to analyze and visualize those data in order to better understand them and make appropriate management decisions. Objective 2.1 is to assess reporting tools within the GIS platform. These tools allow staff to create user-friendly reports to better understand the spatial data. One example of this are the reports created for our sign shop staff. The sign reports collect and display a set of pictures over time of a sign face as it weathers and needs to be replaced. Objective 2.2 is to conduct a discovery process for an appropriate technology or methodology to assess current trail conditions in a uniform and efficient manner. This information will allow staff to identify priorities and create a work plan to address maintenance needs, to set trails maintenance standards, identify unsustainable trails, design alternative routes, and to justify additional funding and staffing. Objective 2.3 is to develop a framework for landscape-level resilience-based planning process. This project is currently in a discovery phase. Beyond 2021, the landscape analysis is envisioned to be a GIS-based interactive tool that shows how resources interact under different management scenarios, helps develop mitigation for conflict of those resources, improves data-driven decision-making, and visually and analytically helps staff understand how individual resources fit within the larger landscape and Boulder County's portfolio of open space lands. Goal 3 is about providing access to and use of data and applications. Objective 3.1 is developing standards for creating colorblind accessible maps. To the right, you see a snippet of a draft open space map testing those proposed standards. These draft standards and test cases need to be reviewed by stakeholder groups prior to implementation. Objective 3.2 is to develop universal design standards for all our software applications. Universal design standards means designing our applications to be accessible to all people, regardless of age, disability, or other factors. We are currently looking at this objective to determine if it would be better rolled into a departmental strategic approach, as well as how it relates to Objective 3.1. Objective 3.3 is to explore the mobile functionality of the Alpha Anywhere software that we use for creating new software solutions, such as the Rangers ticket tracking application. We are currently in the exploratory phase to understand how this works on the software side, what requirements and processes will be, and the return on investment for ramping up a mobile implementation of Alpha Anywhere. Goal 4 is to create and lead a technology strategy for parks and open space. It is the responsibility and expertise of the data solutions team to provide leadership and guidance to the department in creating a technology strategy in order to ensure that parks and open space has the right data-related tools, access, and support to accomplish our various team and departmental goals. Objectives 1 through 4, as well as 7, pertain to the IT team, so I will focus on objectives 5 and 6. To accomplish Goal 4, Objective 4.5 is to focus on a GIS strategy for the department, determining the appropriate GIS platforms, necessary licensing, as well as processes for implementation and ongoing utilization. Currently, the countywide GIS strategy team is working on creating standards, guidelines, and best practices for our online suite of GIS tools. The team is also looking at what long-term GIS use and access for departments will look like, given the changing software framework. Objective 4.6 is to move forward with an approved and long-term unmanned aerial system, or UAS program. This program was approved this spring by the department. We are now continuing on with UAS flight operations while also setting up structured policies and procedures to ensure ongoing operation of the UAS program. Using drone technology to capture data enables staff from all of our different teams to utilize a new timely source of data to accomplish their resource management goals. Goal 5 is to lead the use, adoption, and governance for data and technology at parks and open space. For the data solutions team and Objective 5.3, that means defining the processes and actions required to manage the planning, design, implementation, and ongoing innovative use and maintenance of data technologies, including GIS and database applications. There are many ways to approach governance, and we are currently working on determining the appropriate framework to utilize in this process. Goal 6 is all about collaborating with external partners to find solutions, share knowledge, and leverage our combined resources. One way we are doing that now is through Objective 6.1, which is working with the cities of Longmont and Boulder to integrate them into our ongoing hydrology data project. This works to create a single comprehensive GIS dataset for streams, ditches, lakes, and reservoirs. OSMP at the City of Boulder has been fully integrated, and we have begun the conversation with the Utilities Department at the City of Boulder. Objective 6.2 is to work with the City of Boulder OSMP and our plant ecology staff at Parks and Open Space to implement changes made to the National Vegetation Classification Structure. This has been a very time-intensive project for both the Data Solutions team as well as the Plant Ecology team. The Data Solutions team's tasks on this project have largely been completed.
Hello, my name is Carl Fitterer. I'm the business analyst for Parks and Open Space. The business analyst tech group is responsible for identifying technology needs and finding appropriate solutions. We also provide technical support and training to staff. We maintain the computers and other IT equipment for the department. Our BA Tech group consists of myself as business analyst and team leader, and Fernando Polanco, who provides technical support and assists with project implementation. The goals that our team is focused on are lead and govern an appropriate, innovative, adaptive, and sustainable strategy for technological resources, and lead the department in use, adoption, and governance of data and technology. I'll now give a brief overview of the top objectives we've been working on to advance our goals. Annually inventory technical equipment and replace proactively. This is ongoing and on track for this year. We've tracked our computer inventory and replaced almost all of our computers that were over 5 years old. Provide timely staff support when problems arise. Technical support will be delivered with the highest level of customer service. Keeping our staff working is our highest priority. Through the addition of a support technician, we have been able to provide timely troubleshooting and support both work from home and office reopening needs. We've also adopted new remote support tools to manage and troubleshoot computers wherever they are. Sustainable practices will be adopted wherever possible. Most desktop computers have been replaced with energy-efficient laptop computers. The laptops have allowed most staff to work from home, which reduces commuting pollution significantly. Provide timely support for staff working remotely with appropriate technology, equipment, and additional training resources. About 65 additional laptop computers have been deployed to facilitate remote working. All of our office staff have had home offices set up. Remote access and video conferencing have been fully implemented. As the office building reopens, a hoteling model of reservable office spaces is being piloted for work from home staff. New conference room equipment to allow hybrid in-office remote staff meetings is being piloted. We've developed new IT training resources and a self-help document library with answers to the most common IT problems. New technologies that support the Parks and Open Space strategic priorities will be researched, implemented, and supported. A discovery project was started for an asset management system to inventory, track the condition, and maintenance of Parks and Open Space assets. Additionally, a Ranger MDC tablet computer project for in-vehicle computing and live dispatch system has been implemented. A data storage, sharing, and protection policy will be implemented by the end of 2021. Guidance for file storage on OneDrive, Teams, network storage, FileNet, and SharePoint was created, shared with the management team, and distributed to the staff. Training resources have been created for cloud file sharing and collaboration. Increase IT security in response to increased threats. Support for the implementation of multi-factor authentication. New security training was implemented. The removal of unsecured remote access tools and replacement of Boulder County approved technologies. And a new policy preventing any unapproved software from being added to the network.
Okay, so you just heard about our strategic plans. I want to open that up for questions.
Is this Christy?
I'm sorry, yes, this is Christy.
Okay, we don't see your video, so.
Oh, I'm sorry. There you go.
So great, thank you. And thank you both for your presentation. You know, sometimes this is the unrecognized backstory that you guys are doing all this stuff in the background, but these days with cybersecurity issues, with just the importance of knowing what you have and having so many complex pieces, being able to log it all and keep it all functioning, I think it's just hugely important. So even though, often you guys don't get the recognition, I just want to express my appreciation for all you're doing. It's pretty amazing how much is going on there. So thank you for that. But I will go ahead and open it up for any other questions or comments from the board.
Sure. Ann Obenchain here. Thank you for the presentations. I guess I'm curious to understand how much PII data or personally identifiable information we're collecting from consumers, and with the Colorado Privacy Act that's just being signed now and going into effect in 2023, what work will you be doing and maybe it's a different department, I'm not sure, but how will that affect the work that you're currently doing and what you're planning for in the near future?
So I can speak for the data solutions team. We do not collect any PII information from the public. The department does have PII information, and that is largely administered by our administration division. But in terms of, we're really focused on resource data collection, and we don't have any of that PII data.
Great, thank you.
Trace Baker here. Thank you very much for your presentations. Under Objective 2-2, trails, data collection or process, would this possibly include things like input from volunteers or perhaps even directly from the public as they use the trails and make observations?
So at this time, what our trails crew is really, what they're really needing is a way to collect information about the trail, such as the slope, the cross slope, how close the vegetation is into the trail, those kinds of information, so that we can focus on maintenance, rerouting, all of those kinds of things. We have talked about crowdsourcing information. It's a really big endeavor. And at this point, we don't have the resources to manage that. But it is something that the entire crowdsourcing conversation is a conversation that's ongoing within the department. And we revisit it every so often to decide, do we still think this is not something we want to do? Is this something we might want to think about? But at this point, we're not doing any crowdsourcing for information.
Okay, well, thank you for at least considering that in the future. Second question, Objective 4-3, sustainable practice. Does this include when equipment is retired? Is it reused or recycled on replacement? And if there is recycling cost, is that borne by the county?
So I can't speak as an expert to that. We work with resource conservation, I believe, to handle all the recycling. I think our Boulder County IT department may also outsource some of the recycling of the materials, but I know that they're complying with our Boulder County waste policies and e-waste policies to make sure that any hazardous materials, heavy metals are dealt with properly. And I believe we used to have a system of donating some of our old computers, but it was very cumbersome to do that and make sure all of any sensitive data was removed. So I believe that computers are redeployed as much as possible, and then disposed of through the environmentally approved practices by the county.
Hey, Carl Christie, thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else? Tony, are you speaking? You're on mute. Okay, I'm not hearing anyone, so looks like maybe you tried to get through, but and Tina, did you have any last comments? I see you just okay. All right. Well, thank you all so much for, and I presume this is the team who has put together the Boulder County Trails app. Is that correct?
Yes, along Nick Brockman was also on that team, as well as many others within the county and with our partners throughout the county at other public agencies as well.
Well, I want to thank you for that. I use it quite a lot, and I think it's an amazing app, and you guys do a really good job of keeping it up to date. So
great.
Kudos.
I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right. Well, thanks again. Appreciate all your good work. Renata, our next item, I believe, is Mayhoffer. Is that correct?
Yeah, it's the overview of Mayhoffer Farm Management Plan process. The presenters are Ethan Abner, Kara Potter, and Jenna Van Gerwen, who are students at CU's Master of the Environment program. This is an information item.
Great, thank you.
And good evening, POSAC members. This is Tina Nielsen. I'm going to just provide a quick introduction to you, to the project, and to the team members. What I want to let you know is that the Masters of the Environment program has revamped their whole program, and the new program is in its second year, and they reached out to us to ask us if we had any projects to propose for a capstone project. And we huddled and realized that the Mayhoffer Farm project would be a very good fit for this project for a couple of reasons. One, it's a jointly owned property between Lafayette, Louisville, and Boulder County. High interest in this property among the residents of Lafayette and Louisville, yet it wasn't on anyone's work plan to do. So we felt that would be a great opportunity to give to the students as a project. And then the second reason is that it is right next door to the Harney-Listoka property, and you'll hear more about this, which provides an opportunity for them to use that management plan as a model and a guide, which makes it a little bit simpler than some of our management planning processes. So for those two reasons, we put together an RFP. We were selected, we were matched with the three students that you're going to meet here in a minute. And the three agencies, Lafayette, Louisville, and Boulder County, are very excited to be working with these wonderful young people and the energy that they bring to it. So with that, let me just turn it over to the three students for their presentation.
Great. Welcome.
Thank you, Tina, for the introduction. I am going to go ahead and share my screen. All right. Does everyone see that just fine?
Yes.
Lovely. So I'll go ahead and get started. Hello, my name is Jenna Van Gerwen. My colleagues Ethan and Kara and myself are all graduate students in the Masters of the Environment program at CU Boulder. This is a professional program that requires students to partner with an organization, like what Tina was saying, to support their work on a particular project over the course of about a year. And we were fortunate enough to be selected by Boulder County Parks and Open Space, as well as the cities of Lafayette and Louisville, to work on the Mayhoffer Farm Management Plan. Oops, there we go. So the Mayhoffer Farm property forms part of the buffer between the cities of Lafayette and Louisville, and is jointly owned and managed by Boulder County, the city of Lafayette, and the city of Louisville. For those who are less familiar, here's a map that kind of shows you what it looks like from an aerial view. And so this lies between the crossroads of Empire Road and 95th Street. The Mayhoffer Farm property is shown in that lighter green color, while the adjacent property, Harney-Listoka, is shown in bright green. The open space consists of primarily agricultural lands, with 3 of those properties that used to be previously a part of the land, but now are privately owned. And then future trails are going to be intended to connect these two properties while also providing educational opportunities on both cultural and historical background. So as a team for this property, we were tasked with establishing a vision and a management plan for Mayhoffer Farm and identifying strategies for implementing this vision and plan. So as some of you may know, and as Tina mentioned, this is a high priority land acquisition project for the cities of Lafayette and Louisville, as well as Boulder County. And the project serves as a very important management plan to community members due to its potential for multiple uses and ability to allow for more connectivity between areas, like I mentioned earlier with the Harney-Listoka property and Mayhoffer. So for this, we believe that a successful project would be, or for our partners, would be the completion and approval by the 6 governing bodies, those of which all include the Lafayette Open Space Advisory Committee, Louisville Open Space Advisory Board, Boulder County Advisory Board, this group right here, the Boulder County Advisory, the Lafayette City Council, the Louisville City Council, and then Boulder County Commissioners. And this would be for the management plan that seeks to include issues such as incorporating diverse community perspectives into the planning process, balancing agriculture with native wildlife. So for example, a native prairie grass riparian buffer zone along Coal Creek, creating ADA compliant trails and amenities for recreational use. And lastly, interpretive activities and education opportunities, including cultural, historical, and ecological information. So for instance, this could be opportunities to talk about the historical mining operations or agricultural uses that were previously done on the land. And then a successful project for our team would be receiving the approval of the land management plan by all those relevant bodies that I mentioned. So that's, the 2 for Lafayette, 2 for Louisville, and then 2 for Boulder County. And sorry, next slide. Some of the expected deliverables we're planning to produce or see at the end of this capstone project entails a land management plan, a GIS story map, and professional presentations. So for this project, it would be an actionable plan that aims to incorporate agriculture, native habitat conservation, recreational and educational opportunities, all the while increasing access to the land as well. And our land management plan would be modeled on the similar plan that was used or that was made for the Harney-Listoka property. And we aim to incorporate as many of the partner preferences as we can while remaining mindful of the broader community needs. So we'll be creating a draft land management plan over the next month or so to be reviewed prior to finalization of this document. The next deliverable is a GIS story map that will be used as an immersive way to publicly distribute information with interactive maps, while also giving the narrative a stronger sense of place. This is our most public-facing deliverable, and we will also, or just recently finished up a community profile of the area to get a better understanding of the local community and what their needs may be for that. And then lastly, our professional presentations. So these are going to be given to the 6 governing bodies I've mentioned, and will be used to convey our findings and plan effectively in hopes of being approved and implemented. To ensure our final plan addresses both partner preferences and community needs, we'll be creating a public engagement and outreach plan that'll allow us to make more informed decisions prior to the public comment period. All 3 of these interim deliverables serve each and every final deliverable equally, and they allow us to make informed decisions regarding the direction of that final land management plan. I'm now going to pass it off to Kara to talk a little bit more about the project.
Thanks, Jenna. Hi there, everyone. My name is Kara, and I'm going to be going over our methodology, our timeline, and the details of the process of approval, which Jenna has mentioned. So in order to create the highest quality deliverables, we feel that a mixed methodology approach will be the most comprehensive and effective. Background research, document review have been a crucial part of our project over the past few months. As Jenna mentioned, the Harney-Listoka property is adjacent to the Mayhoffer farm, and familiarizing ourselves with the Harney-Listoka management plan is foundational for drafting our plan for Mayhoffer. After meeting with the current agricultural leasee, Keith Bateman, and the agricultural resources supervisor, Rob Alexander, we've come to understand that the Mayhoffer farm functionally serves as an extension to the Harney-Listoka property, and therefore our land management plan should be written to build off of the existing Harney-Listoka management plan. In addition to reviewing this plan, stakeholder engagement will be the cornerstone of our project. Along with property professionals and local government specialists, Tina, Rob, and Ember have identified engaging traditionally underserved and underrepresented local communities as a primary goal for our project. Our work has serendipitously aligned with the approval of Boulder County's first Cultural Responsiveness and Inclusion Strategic Plan, or the CRISP. For anyone who's unfamiliar, the intent of the CRISP is to incorporate cultural awareness and inclusivity into all of the Parks and Open Space does. This includes finding better ways to engage and provide services for marginalized and underserved communities. And we will draw extensively on the findings and recommendations of the CRISP, along with our extensive background research to inform and direct our mixed methodology approach. So specifically, we've chosen 3 qualitative methodologies guiding stakeholder engagement, which include interviews, surveys, and public comment. We have begun meeting with and interviewing property professionals and key stakeholders to gain a foundational understanding of the property and the local community. So sorry, my computer is being a little funny. Yes, sorry. So we have begun meeting with property professionals and key stakeholders to gain a foundational understanding of the property and the local community. We also plan to conduct randomized and non-randomized surveys in order to collect general public opinion, as well as reach specific underrepresented interest groups. We'll be working with trusted community leaders to disseminate these targeted surveys, specifically within the Latinx and youth communities. Lastly, we plan to collect official public comment, primarily through the Open Space Advisory Board meetings in the fall, which Jenna has mentioned, here in Boulder, as well as in Louisville and Lafayette. We've created an online webpage through the Boulder County Parks and Open Space site with the help of Nick, with information about our project, as well as additional space for public comment. Each of these qualitative processes will be informed by quantitative methods, including data collection and analysis, as well as mapping and GIS. Our data collection and analysis is focused on economic and demographic information of the local community, information on visitation and use of similar open space properties, as well as collection and analysis of our own survey results. Mapping and GIS will be a crucial tool throughout our project for assessing property characteristics such as hydrology, surrounding access and amenities, and areas of opportunity for trail and habitat connectivity. GIS will also be an important tool for creating our public-facing final deliverable, the story map. So to give our project a bit more context, we've laid out this timeline with major milestones and goals. We've already completed a few major milestones through the months of March, April, and May. And moving into June, our primary goals are stakeholder engagement and survey dissemination. This will hopefully set us up to craft our first full draft of the management plan in late July, early August. In August, we plan to finalize our draft of the management plan along with the story map in preparation for the presentations to the open space advisory boards in September. October will be focused on integrating the revisions and comments we received from public comment in those meetings in preparation for our second round of meetings to the city councils and county commissioners, as well as our capital. Then ideally, we will have wrapped up all of our final deliverables by December and collaborate with our partners to ensure the project is left in good hands to be carried forward. Again, one of the goals that Tina, Rob, and Ember identified early on was best case scenario, our land management plan would be reviewed and approved by all 6 bodies of approval between Boulder, Louisville, and Lafayette. This process of approval has been a guiding factor in scoping and planning our project. You all are an important piece of this process, which is part of the reason we wanted to meet with you early on and get everybody on board. For anyone who's unfamiliar, this visual aims to break down the full process of approval for our management plan. So we'll first present our draft in September, ideally, to the open space advisory boards in the 2 cities and the county. We'll then integrate revisions and present our modified draft to the city councils and the city commissioners. This may also require additional edits before we could potentially receive full approval for our plan. Throughout this process, we will also be collaborating with attorneys from each city and the county to create an intergovernmental agreement. With that, I will pass it off to Ethan.
Thanks, Kara. Good evening, everyone. Thanks again for having us. I'll be discussing some of the project modifications we've made so far and how we hope the land management plan will include the relevant priorities and goals identified in our partner agencies' planning documents, which seek to manage land and open space for the community's benefit. I'd like to start by reviewing some of the project modifications that we've made so far. First and foremost, we've altered our project's original focus and scope to account for existing agreements associated with the Mayhoffer farm property. This has allowed us to better identify the boundaries or limitations that we'll need to consider as we draft the land management plan. For instance, the type of agricultural operations planned by the lessee, input from adjacent private property owners with easements, and accessibility will likely impact trail planning. It's important that we address concerns like these in order to reach desirable outcomes. We hope to accomplish this in part through effective public engagement. We've thought a lot about how we're going to engage stakeholders regarding the land management plan. In addition to the methodologies that Kara discussed earlier, we've been thinking about how we can appropriately bound our initial outreach to create opportunities for effective engagement without setting unrealistic expectations in the community. For instance, rather than focus broadly on what amenities folks might want to see at the property, some of which might not be practical, we'll try to focus on particular interests related to amenities that could be realistically developed there. One of the greatest challenges we'll be facing is the compressed timeline and milestones that we've set for ourselves. We understand that we're trying to move very quickly on this project, but are hopeful that we'll be able to accomplish most of the tasks that we've outlined. As the project goes on, however, we'll remain cognizant of any need to adjust our timeline to ensure that we're doing this right and not trying to rush it through the process. Next slide, please. Next, I'd like to take a moment to address some of the key goals and objectives for open space properties that have been identified by the Board of County Commissioners in the cities of Lafayette and Louisville. The jointly owned Boulder County Lafayette Louisville Open Space Management Plan, which was adopted in 2004, identifies maintaining, improving, and promoting sustainable agricultural opportunities and providing appropriate passive recreational opportunities as common management goals for jointly owned properties like the Mayhoffer Farm. Additionally, the Boulder County Commissioner's strategic priorities for 2019 to 2023 specifically focuses on responding to key issues affecting local communities, primarily through addressing societal and environmental needs. One of the strategic priorities outlined by the commissioners is land and water stewardship, which aims to preserve and effectively steward open spaces within the county. Goal 2, under this particular section, for example, aims to demonstrate excellent stewardship of open space, including protection of natural resources, community access, and quality of life through improved planning, engagement, and implementation on Boulder County parks and open space land. Similarly, Lafayette's Parks, Recreation, and Open Space Master Plan update, which was completed in 2019, also seeks to improve trail connectivity. The master plan acknowledges that the public considers trails, trail connectivity in the city and the surrounding areas, and safe routes to key destinations as some of the most important components of the parks, recreation, and open space system. The plan also seeks to use native grasses in suitable areas, as Jenna mentioned, a possibility we hope to explore as we continue our discussions with the staff and move throughout the planning process. Finally, Louisville's priorities include preserving and promoting cultural resources, agriculture, scenic vistas, and appropriate passive recreation activities. Additionally, Louisville's Parks, Recreation, Open Space, and Trails Comprehensive Master Plan recommends the department improve trail connections to promote healthy and enjoyable alternative transportation and opportunities for active recreation. One of the specific objectives within this recommendations highlights continuing to provide connections from Louisville's trails to regional trails and trails provided by neighboring agencies. I'm hoping that everyone's noticing that there is a common theme here with trail connectivity. As we begin work in earnest on the land management plan, we'll be sure to continue referencing these priorities, goals, and objectives. As Jenna and Kara noted earlier, we believe that the Mayhoffer property offers an amazing opportunity to improve trail connections, implement recommendations from the CRISP, preserve important community characteristics, and provide educational opportunities related to history, culture, and the natural environment. On behalf of my colleagues, thank you again for your attention and for having us this evening. We'll continue working with your staff and hope to continue this conversation moving forward. With that, we're happy to answer any questions.
Great. Thank you, Ethan, Jenna, and I'm sorry, Kara. Appreciate your presentation, and I'm sure the board will have some questions. I have just one to start with, and that is my experience with public process is that it's easy to get the same stakeholders and leaders involved with this type of thing. They're generally accessible. They're used to that outreach. However, to get the voices from those that are not heard from as much and yet have valuable input is sometimes more difficult. I'm wondering if you have any things you'll do to specifically reach out to a wider audience and not just get the same input that we have on most other projects.
Take a stab at it, and then Ethan, you can fill in if I miss anything. But currently we're focusing on developing some pretty extensive surveys to engage a wide variety of public participants. And part of that will be a targeted survey for youth and Latinx communities, which are typically more underrepresented for being such a present part of the local population. And so we have a few community leaders through the Thorn Nature Experience, as well as Marina LaGrave, who's going to be helping us disseminate surveys to certain Latinx and Hispanic families. Ethan, do you have any other things to highlight?
Yeah, I would just say that this is partially where the CRISP, which we're fortunate enough was just completed, really comes in. There are a lot of great recommendations in there about building those relationships with local communities and working with trusted agents to kind of gauge, the interests of those local communities. It's not going to be easy. I'm not going to pretend like it's going to be easy, but I feel like we've been working with our partners at all of the relevant agencies to kind of try and reach out to those folks. And I would, if there's anybody that you recommend we reach out to as well, any of you as members recommend we reach out to, we're happy to take those recommendations as well.
Thank you.
Could I follow up on that just a little bit?
Yes, sir.
Thanks. I really appreciate that you guys are going after some of these communities that have been less involved and less communicated with. And Thorn is a great trusted partner for a lot of the Latinx folks, and Keith and those folks have done a great job. I'm curious if you've considered doing any of those surveys or any of those interviews in Spanish. And I'm curious if you've considered using promotores or other people from the community to actually administer those surveys or those interviews, because even with a trusted partner, there's a cultural divide. And so I'm just kind of curious about some of those strategies.
I can go ahead and take that one. Yeah, so for all of the survey questions, we're going to provide it also in Spanish for those communities and for people who predominantly speak Spanish. And as for like going into the communities, I think it's a group called Explorando the Senderos. Kara, is that right? Right? Yeah. And so there's a group, and Marina LaGrave is the person who leads them. And so we've been in contact with her. And as a trusted community leader, we're seeing if there's a chance that she would be able to distribute some, just because she's more trusted in that community instead of having us go into it. So as of right now, that's our plan for distributing that.
That's fantastic. That's great.
And in terms of the promotores, Rob Vrain, who is our partner through Lafayette, has definitely mentioned them. And I think we're just now getting into the survey phase of our project. And so that's definitely something we should follow up on, because it's something we've kind of mentioned a few times, but not really acted on.
Cool. Thank you, guys. Appreciate it. Sounds like a great project.
I have a question, Jen Archuleta. So Pew Research Foundation looked at surveying Hispanic and Latin communities and found that there's a very low participation rate because there's really not a high level of trust in those communities in answering governmental surveys. What other methods do you have to reach out to these communities that would actually make them feel safe and get the data that you're looking for than surveys?
So I think, thank you for the question. I think this is where kind of the challenge comes in, right? Trying to engage these communities with the traditional methodologies that we used in the past just hasn't been effective. And me, as someone who's just moved to Boulder County last year, right, I don't have a lot of trust in the local community. So I think we're going to have to be pretty innovative about those outreach methodologies, right? Because just putting something on a website that no one knows about isn't going to be helpful, even if it is in Spanish. So I think working through trying to take the guidance that we get from those folks that we're working with in how to better engage those communities, and again, relying on some of the recommendations in the CRIS because there's a lot of good work there. Moving forward with that is probably the best way to do it at this point. Does that answer your question, ma'am?
Yeah, as best you can, I guess, with what you've got to work with.
Yeah, something else we talked about early on with Marina is, like you said, a lot of folks in the Hispanic community don't trust government sources, but they are very active on Facebook. And so potentially creating a Facebook page. Marina has a Facebook page for that group, Explorando Senderos. And we're trying to be as tactful and respectful as we can about that group. And like Ethan said, not just like barge in and demand answers to our survey questions. But I think we're gonna defer to Marina on how she thinks it'd be best for us to engage with those groups of people, or if we should exclusively go through her. So yeah, like Ethan mentioned, it's gonna be difficult, but it's definitely something we're mindful of.
And I might just add that from my experience, working with as many, instead of relying on one person, working with as many groups as possible to get as wide of a publicity that you do have a survey out there. So schools, childcare centers, libraries, recreation centers, things like that are often very good places that have a good population representation across the board. So as long as you're reaching out to those organizations, hopefully you've covered your bases. You can only go so far, and then people have to come and be willing to do it. But and certainly in-person contacts are very valuable, even if you are not a trusted member of the community. I think just that person-to-person contact is very valuable. So if there is any possibility for that, I think it would really speak volumes to the intent of your project. So, but good work. And does anyone else from the board have any comments or questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much for your presentation. It seems like a really excellent capstone project, and I wish you the best of luck, and I'll look forward to hearing from you in September.
Thank you so much. We're thankful for the opportunity.
Okay.
Thanks, you guys.
Great.
Yeah, thank you. And feel free to reach out if you have any further questions through Tina. We'd be happy to stay in touch.
Sounds good. Okay, thank you. So we'll move on to the next one, Renata. Is that the fish passage? Am I remembering correctly?
Yes, it's the fish passage installation on St. Vrain Creek. Presenters are Matt Kozba, Charla Benjamin, and Tim Zick, and it's an information item.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. Let me see if I can share my screen. How's that looking, Renata?
Looks good.
Okay. Thank you, everybody, for holding in there. The coveted almost golden position as last speaker. But I hope this is an informative and sort of fun talk. I will tell you, well, let me just get into it. So I'm going to be today discussing the fish passage installations we've been doing on the St. Vrain Creek. Two of these are the Longmont Supply Diversion and the Niwot Diversion. As we heard, I'm Matt Copes. I'm the wildlife biologist. I also have a fisheries background. And so I have a lot of interest and experience doing work on fisheries. And then Charla Benjamin and Tim Zick are also going to be speaking about their roles on these projects. But I have to say, there are many, many other staff and people involved in these projects that need to have mentioned. We're just going to give you the drive-by windshield survey of these projects today. And if you have any more questions, please do reach out and ask me or the others who have worked on these projects a bit more about these projects. And just on the title screen here, you can see the finished projects, what they look like. The Longmont Fish Passage, the Longmont Supply is on the left. That's what it looks like when it's done now. And Niwot is on the right. And we're going to talk a little bit about what and where. So let me see if I can advance my slide. So why do we need fish passage on the St. Vrain Creek? And I think Gary Larson hit it on the head a little bit, is that if you notice the little guy in the bottom right there, some fish need an alternative way to get over ramps or jumps or dams. Some fish like salmon, they're really good at jumping. Other fish are completely inept. They cannot jump at all. And that's what a lot of our fish in the St. Vrain Creek, which are all mostly native endemics, local species, they simply can't make it over. Even our trout can't make it over if there's no water passing over. So native fish, as I said, have, which are on this group on the left. These are our local fish that are of state concern. They are listed in our Boulder County Comprehensive Plan as species, wildlife species of special concern. You can see many of them have a listing that says threatened or endangered. Those are all state listings, or rare or declining. And this is because the conditions in the river really requires passage and connectivity and habitat connections. And so these projects like fish passage are keeping these animals on our landscape. Trout, brown trout, rainbow trout, they also need to move in our river system. It also benefits our natives because the native fish, because the trout tend to become very dense below dams. And as the trout cannot move, they tend to eat our little native fish more and more frequently, which is another concern. So we're trying to make life easier for all. This is a little graphic I put together. Another reason why we need to create passages or connectivity in rivers is sort of like we need to create connectivity for elk and other land animals. Climate change adaptation for animals generally means connectivity of habitats. And what I'm showing here is an animation produced by our local Rocky Mountain Research Station, where it's showing temperature change in the local stream in the St. Vrain, and that's the top line, this between Longmont and this corner and up to Lyons. This is 66 Foothills Highway. Basically, the water is getting warmer. It changes from yellow to orange to red. And so through our project area, which I'm going to describe, it's actually getting warmer over the next 40 and 80 years. So through 2080, the habitat temperature, which is very predictive of where these fish can live. A lot of these little native fish are really key to what we call the transition to zone, the Goldilocks temperature. They like the middle water temperature. They don't like too cold and they don't like it too hot. So really they're looking for the orange and not the red and not the yellow. And so we can see already predictively through climate modeling that we know local streams are going to be changing their habitats just because of temperature. So creating connectivity is necessary to preserve these species on our landscape. Where do we need fish passage? So I'm highlighting here the two projects that we've completed on the stream. All of these red and black and triangles and green triangles on this map are all the diversion structures and otherwise impediments to fish movement on the St. Vrain Creek. And we've noted those that have fish passage and those that need it. And this has changed over time since this was produced in 2014, which was pretty soon after the flood of 2013. And so now we started to really have that, really the flood was the impetus to start thinking about retrofitting damaged diversion structures and other water infrastructure for fish passage, because these really aren't just about fish passage. They're also about helping water users and farmers and irrigators have a more resilient structure, but rebuilding it in perhaps a smarter way or more resilient, environmentally friendly way. Again, drilling in a little bit about where do we need fish passage, the Niwot structure, and what this figure is Colorado Parks and Wildlife identified highest priority diversions on the St. Vrain for native fish passage. The St. Vrain is the only system other than Plum Creek, which is upstream of Chatfield Reservoir, that still has many of these native local fish. And so the state prioritized through funding and also through mapping where we should be putting in fish passage in the St. Vrain. And here's a Niwot. This is just north of our Parks and Open Space Ron Stewart building, right across the street. And then the other one, the Longmont Supply, is sort of just down from where the foothills hits 66, which is just east of Lyons. And so this structure is down here in the Western Mobile Open Space property. So how do we create fish passage? And in a couple minutes or a minute, Tim and Charlotte are going to talk about how their role in these projects. And like I just suggested, these projects aren't simply about helping fish in the river. It's about collaboration and working with landowners, ditch companies, water rights owners, and a variety of people, cities, water supplies, and really coming to a common solution on how can we make this beneficial for everyone, for the river health, for the fish, and for getting water for the future. And there's a lot of permitting and other things that have to go on. And interestingly, in these projects, when we were doing some of these projects, we've actually experienced some new permitting conditions at the state and local and county level for working in the streams to account for evaporative loss and other things. And we successfully negotiated those things. And we also went through new ways to map the floodplain to account for, floodplain rise from doing these projects. And so we had to sort of pave and blaze trails for working in the river while we were doing these projects. Here is a Niwot project. What it looked like before the project is on the left. It was a very large concrete and large boulder structure that was put into the river, backed up a large area of the river, but it served the needs of the ditch, especially after the flood, completely blocking fish passage. And then after the project on the right, you can see there is no structure left. We rebuilt it in what's called a natural riffle, a constructed riffle where there is actually no concrete structure in the river. It's designed using embedded, very large, very stably embedded boulders in the stream to divert the water. And then this is the Longmont Supply Diversion, fish passage construction. And the image on the left, the water historically goes straight down straight to the back to the diversion channel. And that goes right down to the ditch. And there's a dam at the end of that where it spills over. Well, to the right where there's some boulders, that was the historic channel of the St. Vrain. We reconnected that to the river. So now native fish and trout can travel up and down and bypass the ditch infrastructure and get around the dam. And it also helps take pressure off this infrastructure for Longmont's water supply and ditches. And there's a lot of benefits to that. One of the things that really is striking to me is that a lot of the decrees, the diversions, the water use was decreed in these areas in the Longmont Supply and the Niwot Ditch in the 1860s. So you can assume that these areas were beginning to be dammed at least in the 1860s and have been in that more or less in that condition since that time. So these fish passages are now opening the creek to fish after that many years. So well over a century, we are now reconnecting the river and giving all these organisms the chance to move up and down freely in these areas of the river. So next, I think we're going to have the Longmont Supply Fish Passage, a brief discussion, and that's by Charla. And I will advance Charla's slides. If Charla can go ahead and come on.
Yep, I'm on.
Okay, I will advance the slides when you tell me, Charla.
All right, thank you, Mac. All right, as Mac said, this is not just about fish passage. So the way we were able to get this project moving with the funding and with the various stakeholders is to basically call it a multi-objective diversion structure. So we're gonna kind of go through what were some of the priority objectives that we needed to attain to be able to get this project to actually happen. And a lot of that is bringing the stakeholders on board at stage 0 or at 0% of the project so that we didn't try to design the project without somebody, feeling left out. So this was a very rewarding collaborative project, and we often, these days, instead of calling it fish passage, we'll call it a passage project, and that is to pass water, sediment, macroinvertebrates, amphibians, and fish. And as Max said, connect, provide connectivity. So it's not just about the aquatic species, it's also about those land species. We've seen so many different mammals out there, birds, and the Preble's meadow jumping mouse, which is one of our threatened and endangered species, has high quality habitat upstream and downstream of this location. So we're able to provide some connectivity for them as well. And this picture is about some of our actually fish passage stakeholders. So we had a CSU researcher, people from the U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service, and then our consulting design engineer in Boulder County. So we had lots of different design walks out there to figure out how we could tweak designs, improve them just a little bit here and there to get the best project we could. Okay. All right, so big important stakeholder is the people that own the water. So we need to make sure that we preserve the decreed water rights. In this case, we had a ditch company, and we also had an unconsolidated ditch. So we had a lot of different stakeholders that had water rights that we involved at various stages along the way. And one thing we needed to do was be able to assure them that they were going to get the water that they needed at the times that they needed it for agricultural purposes or municipal purposes. So in this case, we used sheet pile and grout, so we could sweep the stream. And that means that we're able to, if we're efficiently providing the water rights, we can maximize the flows in the main stem of the channel, which is where the fish are moving, and provide the conditions for them to move. So by providing the service that we need to the ditches, we're also assuring that we have some water left over as often as possible for the fish. We had, the funding was actually to protect infrastructure. So we were protecting the diversion for the ditch and also the railroad ballast for the railroad that goes right along the stream. And the funding was through HUD. So that's the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development, and it was a community development block grant for disaster recovery. So this is one of the last projects in our portfolio for flood recovery. And we called it Reach 3 Phase 2 because it was a portion of the project we weren't able to complete the first time around. So bringing the stakeholders on board at the beginning of this particular project ensured its success. And we also, in the far background where the people are standing, that's the floodplain connectivity that we were able to provide. So one of the objectives was to take that stream power, the high energy, high flows off of the headgate, which is downstream to the left of this picture, and kind of split the flows across the floodplain, dissipate the energy on the floodplain rather than within the stream bed, because we've had a lot of downcutting of the stream channel, and we'd rather connect the floodplain and dissipate the energy out there and then direct it down a channel where we could have ripples and pools. Okay, next. This is the headgate area for the Longmont, for both ditches, in fact, and they were actually cut off with some of the breaches that happened in 2013 flood. So they were actually protected in that flood, but then the next year, 2014, they got a lot of sedimentation. And just the year after year annual pounding of the high water flows against their infrastructure was something they were very interested in helping to protect this area. And so that's why they participated in the project just a little bit upstream of this area. And there's a picture on the right there of the railroad ballast. The stream just keeps on cutting, naturally it wants to move, and it hopefully this will also reduce the maintenance that the railroad has to do. Next slide. This is the portion of the fish passage channel that was constructed, and this is, we don't really call it the fish passage channel anymore, although we did originally. Now it's the main stem of the St. Vrain. And so this is providing, this is still during construction, so we didn't have actively flowing water on the left, but you can see the exposed habitat boulders. So in the riffle sections that are a little bit steeper for the native fish, they need places that they can do the burst. They have a, burst speed and burst distance as far as like being able to move up the channel. They need places to hide from the high flow currents, the velocities, and rest in between the little bursts that they do moving up the channel. So we had a lot of habitat boulders put into the stream, riffles and pools. We were able to successfully protect a lot of willows and cottonwoods that in a construction project, a lot of times you lose that value, but we were able to work with the contractor and preserve a lot of high quality habitat for the Prebble's Meadow jumping mouse, but also to shade the channel so that we can get increased or better quality habitat for the aquatic species as well right off the bat without having to wait for those species to grow in. But on the right, the picture shows a little bit higher water flows that we were experiencing and be able to test out our structures and make sure that it looks fairly natural and does provide, there's actually root wads in there too. So they provide some places to perch as far as aquatic insects and also dissipate the energy with those root wads as well as with the rock. But we were able to plant a lot of shrubs and trees that are native, do a lot of seeding. And so we are going to have a multi-story canopy that is what you need to provide the habitat and food sources for the Prebble's Meadow jumping mouse. So we are connecting their high quality habitats with this restoration project as well. Next project. Apologies for the siren. Okay, yes. All right, and this is my last slide. This is basically, we did have to do a lot of modeling and a lot of proving that this project would work. And we went a little bit upstream of our diversion structure and was able to also lower the floodplain, reconnect the floodplain a little bit more to that down-cutting channel, provide some low water channels and some increased native species. Previously, this was mostly non-native, a few non-native trees here and there, but mostly cheatgrass. So not very high quality habitat for Prebble's Meadow jumping mouse, and it didn't often connect with the flood, the floodplain wasn't connecting with the stream very often. So we were able to meet a bunch of different objectives by working upstream as well as in the channel. And turn it over to you.
Tim. Thank you, Charlotte.
How about that? Can you hear me okay now?
I can hear you.
Okay, great. Thanks, Meg. Yeah, my name's Tim, as Meg mentioned. I'm the project manager for the Niwot ditch diversion project. And really, there's a lot of similarities between the project that I'm running and the one that Charlotte was working on as well, as far as the objectives, goals, and also a lot of the challenges as well, honestly. So, as Mac mentioned earlier on, the need for the project really arose from two primary things that need to be accomplished there, and that was reconstructing a failing diversion system that was diverting water into the Niwot ditch system, as well as hopefully providing fish passage. And you saw on one of the slides earlier on that there was quite a substantial dam there, and of course was quite an impediment to fish movement through that reach. So, the flood, for all the damage it caused, certainly provided some opportunity in that regard as well. For this project to be able to go ahead. We have a number of project stakeholders and partners with this. We have CPW heavily involved in it from the start, US Fish and Wildlife Service, Colorado Trout Unlimited have been really helpful and have provided a lot of support for this project. And of course, we have a number of Boulder County Parks and Open Space staff that have been involved throughout the whole thing as well. So it's been a multi-year project for sure. It started around 2015 when Mac and Tim Schaefer sort of had the idea about getting this thing going. And since then, there's been quite a substantial amount of time spent on the design. We worked really closely with the Niwot Ditch Company and their engineers. And, you know, there was a little bit of conflicting interests there, I guess, to put it that way. But we ultimately got a final design approved by all the stakeholders at the end of last year. So around the fall of last year in 2020. And that process took about 1.5 years to get through that. So, of course, that meant that we were going to be constructing in the wintertime, which certainly has some advantages, but also provides a number of challenges as well. And you'll see in the slide down the bottom here, there's a pretty substantial pond there, and that looks really nice on that day. But the day we started construction, it was about 1.5 feet of ice through there. So that was really one of our first challenges right off the bat. But as we worked through the winter, we started around mid-February. It was, I don't know if you remember, but there was a particularly cold spell in February where it was, around 0 degrees around the county. And that's when we chose to start. So, but then as we worked through the project, the conditions provided other challenges as well, because of course, once the ice melts and then we hit mud season. So the contractor, they really had very few days where they weren't able to work. So we managed to get pretty good progress, although we got to the point where the next challenge was the fact that we were dealing with spring runoff. So although we've done about 75% of the project work, we actually still have a little bit to do. There's a couple of the in-stream structures that we need to finish on the lower end of the project area, and one of the riffles and one of the tow wood protection pieces, which is part of the armoring for the creek banks. And so we intend to finish those hopefully around August, and we've really only got about 1.5 weeks work to do. So it was kind of unfortunate timing, but it's sort of the reality of working in creeks for sure. And as I mentioned earlier on, we had really similar goals with Charlotte's project, and part of that was making sure we could deliver the decreed water for the Niwot ditch and their associated ditches at the proper time. So we were able to accomplish that part of it within that first 75% of the work. So the ditches have their water. They've been running the water since the start of April, and that's been working out pretty good. The other part of it was to make sure that we're designing a resilient structure. Mac, maybe you could go to the next slide for that. Sorry.
And Tim?
Yeah.
I don't know if it's possible for you to turn on your video.
Oh, I'm sorry. I didn't
see.
have control on that. Oh, I did. Yeah, thanks for that.
Sure.
Just totally didn't realize that was off. Okay. So, as I mentioned, we're delivering the decreed water, and that's in the photo there. You can see there's a channel coming down from the left, and in the center of the photo there, you can see a concrete structure, and that's the lower diversion structure. So that really allows any water that doesn't go into the ditch back into the St. Vrain Creek. Thanks for the pointer. And maybe the next slide.
And the ditch is here.
We're sitting on the ditch. And this is actually the upper end. So that's the upper diversion structure. The St. Vrain is coming from the west on the left-hand side of the photograph. The main channel is going in the foreground of the photograph through one of the riffle systems. And in the front there, we've got our diversion system. It's a stopboard design. So, ditch company, ditch riders can go in there and regulate the flow by moving stopboards through there to get the water that they need. But also with the understanding that we want to try and push as much water through the St. Vrain main channel for the fish passage system to be able to work properly. And at that point, when you've got plenty of water, as we have in the photograph there, it's not too much of an issue. But I was actually out there today, and I can tell you the conditions are quite different. There's a lot less water in the creek. The ditches are getting the water that they need, and the diversion system allowing that, but it's also allowing the fish passage system to continue to have water through that as well. And that's really what we're looking for here. So maybe you go to the next slide, Matt. Great, thanks. And this is on the left-hand side there, that's a photo of one of the riffle systems that we constructed. And Charlotte gave you a little bit of info on that, so I won't go into that too much. But it really doesn't look much when you see it on the surface there, but I can tell you there is a lot of work that goes into placing really substantial boulders in there to stabilize everything and to create the fish passage through those areas. And the photo on the right is actually a photo before we started construction, and that's the old diversion dam that was there, and that was really what was creating the fish passage issue for us. And yeah, Mac, maybe you go to the final slide there. Okay, great, thanks. And so, yeah, again, this is another part of the project area, and it's, again, Charlotte talked a little bit about the flood connectivity, and this is definitely part of our project as well. There's on the right, well, on both photos, really, you can see there's sort of a tan area. That's the towwood protection structure. It's a bioengineered structure where there's a combination of wood root wads, cut logs, slash material. There's also rock in there, and then it's capped on with layers of what's called soil lifts. So it's compacted dirt wrapped in a eco blanket that stabilizes things. And that's the other thing that's incorporated into that too is willow plantings. I don't think we can see them very clearly on those photos there. In fact, we planted that a little bit later, but right now there's both of those structures are actually quite green with willows as they're growing now. And the idea with that, of course, is that the willows will establish, the bio parts of the structure will eventually decay over time, but in the future, there'll be a stabilized bank there. So as I mentioned, we've still got a little bit of work to do, about 25% of the project, and we're hoping to get that done in August. We shouldn't have any problem getting that done. And when we're done with that, the project will be done. So yeah, that's about all I got. We'll be waiting for some questions.
Great.
All right. If you'll indulge me, I have just a few slides at the end here. We were out this last week, this week actually, with Colorado Parks and Wildlife. We've actually initiated a fish passage study at the Longmont Supply Project. So we were out there, and interestingly, this is our setup. This is our field setup for Monday and Tuesday. We actually also had MENV students, Masters of the Environment students from CU. We had 4 students we work with through Ocean First Institute, who has also been working with us on our red-bellied dace endangered fish recovery project. And so we had those students, and we had CPW come out. We established a camp, and we went into the creek to collect fish, because the whole objective of this is to collect fish, put little micro transmitters in them called pit tags, and see if they actually use our fancy fish ramp, because everybody wants to know. I want to know. And so here we are with the state, CPW, they have their fishing barge, and we were out there collecting fish in the stream. Interestingly, it was very difficult to collect fish at this time of the year because we came off a very, very high runoff and a long runoff. So we were only able, just to spoil a little bit, we were only able to catch about 200 fish. We really needed about 800 to 1,000. But, and we're all really good at fishing, let me tell you, with our electro fishing gear. But we did our best. We're gonna have to go back out in a little while and get some more. But here's one of our little fish in the bucket. It's probably a white sucker or something. Here are some of the Masters of the Environment students with CPW seasonals working up the fish, putting pit tags and surgically implanting them very quickly into the fish. The fish are anesthetized and using a fish anesthetic. They quickly put those tags in under the watchful training of an expert fish tagger. We had really cool people from CPW come out and help us. These students had really good experience. Let me tell you, they were handling fish and doing a lot of stuff they probably didn't expect a few months ago. In the water, we actually, the CPW has loaned us some very expensive fish telemetry recorders. So these measure when the fish go by. So just like when you're in the grocery line and you pass your food over the scanner, when the fish passes near this, it records when that fish goes over it. So Boyd Wright is there. He's the native species aquatic biologist for our region. We work very closely with Boyd in the state. These are 2 setups right there. Here you can see them in the water. They're very hard to see, but the water is going down that way. And one is set here and the other is set there. We set them in the river using called duckbill anchors. If you ever heard of a duckbill anchor, I think they're usually used to hold up trees. So we use these to keep them in the river. And then we go back and collect the fish tag data. It's wireless. You can use like your phone or computer, but you have to pull the battery off. And those are the big white things on here, and they weigh like 30 pounds. And that's where the students come in. Here's one set at the very top. So we want to know when the fish come up the bottom or come out the top. So this is the top of the fish passage. So we'll know when that first fish makes it over the top, it'll be the first one we know has made it over the top. But this recorder is in place in the water, ready to record. I'm almost done. The one thing I just wanted to say in all of this, and I really don't want to put a slide of me in there. This is really about Boyd and everybody else. Is it takes a village to do projects like these, like anything else, like our real estate projects or anything else. It takes multiple people and teams. Our partners and collaborators are sort of listed on the bottom. I include some that work with us on other fish recovery projects like the red belly dace. They are really making this possible. CPW funded approximately half of this project, which was over $1 million. And CTU and others, but also the universities, Left Hand Watershed, Boulder County Parks and Open Space Foundation has been helping with these projects. St. Vrain Valley School District students have been helping with this project in their Innovation Center. And like I said, CU Boulder students, especially in the Masters of Environment program. I also want to thank our staff, line staff, and also leadership teams for keeping with this project. It started right after the flood, and it's sort of achieving something that was a hard goal one. We're almost there with Niwot. We have the Longmont supply, and we have more to do. The Beckwith is next. I'm just teasing that one. But I also want to, I wish I could give more credence, and I wish more of these people would hear it and understand that the ditch companies and the landowners and the private folks who worked with us to access their land, to let us mess around with their diversions that they've had for 160 years, and they've been doing no problem diverting their water. They let us come in and change things after multi-generational uses of these structures. So that takes a lot of trust and faith in us, and I really appreciate that. I think that shows a lot of graciousness, and I really appreciate that from the people we worked with on these projects. So that said, I also want to thank you guys for also, by way of just supporting these projects and these programs, achieving, a goal of reconnecting ecosystems and environments that have been disconnected for over 150 years. I think that's something we should all be proud of. And the educational and outreach and learning opportunities that will come from this are also, I hope, to be valuable as we move forward with more of these projects. That is all we have.
Great. Thank you, Mac.
Sure.
And thank you, Charla and Tim, even though we never got to see Tim's face. Good presentations from all of you. And any questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none. Yeah, I just have a question on how many more structures do you have left ahead of you?
Well, we have to prioritize.
Right.
There are a few. There were quite a few triangles in that little map I showed you, but really the most important passages need to occur closer to Longmont. So the sort of ones that we go from open space properties to the west to Longmont. And there's only a couple that are real, because most of these native transition zone fish occur closer in Longmont right now, but we're seeing their range changing. That would be the Beckwith diversion, would be the one that we're looking at next. And that's working with the city of Longmont.
Right there at Golden Ponds, I presume.
Yes.
Yeah, that's good. Okay, thank you all very much. Very informative and good project.
Thank you.
Okay, Renata, are we ready for a director update?
Yep, director's update.
Thank you.
To the end.
Okay.
All right.
Hi,
Hello. Hi. How are you? So I'm going to go through a few things here. One of the things that that's happened in the last month is COVID restrictions have loosened. And so that has allowed us to reopen a number of our museums. For example, the Ned Mining Museum and the Agricultural Heritage Center are once again open to the public on the weekends. And we're really excited to welcome back the public to these facilities and share these cultural treasures with the public. Let's see, volunteer projects are also back too. The volunteer coordinators have been working on some creek restoration planting at some of the projects that were just spoken about, weed removal, trail improvements. Let's see. We also have staff working with consultants on bilingual signs for interpretation at the Ag Heritage Center, and those will be installed later this year. And then the Calwood fire recovery is going pretty well. We have 800 acres out of the 1,800 acre total project area completed thus far. Let's see. And then, as you know, the park remains closed and will be closed at least through September 30. Let's see, what else do I have here in my notes in the fading light here? Oh, I wanted to mention that on last week, the board approved the Newland purchase, which you approved at your last meeting. The board also approved elk and vegetation management plan amendment that you saw in May as well. Let's see, I can't remember if we've updated you on some of the hiring, like the hiring for the director or the rec and facilities manager positions. I don't know where we've left those. Maybe should I go over those real quick, where we're at with those?
If you could, very briefly, yes, please.
Okay, so when Al Hardy left at the end of May, we plan to have that job posted next month in July. So that'll be the recreation and facility manager. For the director position, that there will be interviews and on July 8th, and Jen Archuleta will be on one of the interview panels. And then there'll be a presentation on July 23rd at Beach by the finalists. We're thinking maybe 2 or 3 finalists. So that'll be open to the public. So we'll provide more information and details on that. And then we're also looking, there may be some other opportunities for staff and POSAC to be involved. We're still working on some of those details. So that's the update with that. And then my last thing is, I just want to say, Paula, thank you so much. You did a wonderful job of leading this meeting. So I really appreciate it. And thank you all, actually, POSAC members, really great questions. Appreciate your engagement on all of the topics. We had a long meeting tonight, so I really appreciate it.
Great, thank you. And thanks to Renata for helping me through the agenda here. So, and thank you, Jen, for stepping up for that interview, being on the panel there. That's good. I'm glad somebody's able to do that. Okay, so looks like there's no more items. I'll just call it an adjournment.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.